Hello, my name is Taya and this is Janis for the Real News Network, and we are here in Milwaukee, Wisconsin, covering the Republican National Convention right behind us. We're going to be inside on the floor, covering the conventions, speaking to delegates, and if possible, reaching out to the politicians who will be present. Of course, what was supposed to be a gathering to nominate President Trump and bask in conservative policy ideas like Project 2025 has been turned completely on its head. That's because yesterday, just a day before delegates arrived, a 20-year-old man named Thomas Matthews Crooks tried to assassinate Donald Trump. Stephen, tell us how this changes the dynamics here.
I think what was supposed to be just a convention about, conservatives, like you said, touting Project 2025, has actually become like sort of a religious ceremony here. You just feel the fervor on the streets and in the people. They feel like, their savior has survived what is a horrifying assassination attempt, but also like there's a new sense of energy about Donald Trump, and it's, really not what we expect in terms of a political convention. It almost seemed like a religious gathering on some. So it's a little different here, and there's also tension in the streets because people are very, very angry, and they don't really know who to kind of point that anger towards, whether it be us, the media. We saw a very interesting sign, we'll talk about that later, but really there's a lot of anger and there's a lot of tension, and it's very, very different. Not that it wouldn't be here before, but it's just been heightened.
And Stephen, there's not just anger directed towards the media, there's been a lot of anger directed towards protesters as well.
Very true.
So the Coalition to March on the RNC has affirmed that it will continue its plan to protest. There was also some pushback during this press conference when a reporter asked the head of the coalition if he would condemn the violence against former President Trump. We actually spoke to him about this after the press conference. I was watching some of the comments from the press, and some of them seemed a bit antagonistic. I think it was, I'm not sure, I think it was a reporter from Politico who asked you about condemning the recent violence against President Trump. How did you perceive that question, and can you share with us what your response was?
I perceive it as trying to attach violence to us that has nothing to do with us, right? What they're trying to do is make us seem like we're crazy, we're unhinged, as they always have. We've been very open with the media. We've been doing this specific organizing around the RNC for 2 years now. People have a very good idea of who we are and what we're about and what we're able to do in terms of being able to maintain a family-friendly march. And so, I think it's unfortunately just trying to draw lines to us that don't exist.
But Stephen, along with the protests, what will we be focusing on covering this historic week?
We will be on the floor, hopefully. We have floor passes, and our sort of goal is to be on the floor as much as possible and to cover the dynamics and to see how people react to Trump. Really, this is going to be unprecedented. I don't think we can think of a place in history where a presidential candidate has survived an assassination attempt a day before the convention. So we're going to be on the floor and also trying to talk to a lot of delegates and take the temperature for you, so how the delegates here, the kind of prime Republicans are reacting to this, and how it's going to play out both in the election and further on in policy.
Absolutely. And I would just say this, from the people we've spoken to already, I've spoken to a handful of delegates, we've spoken to Milwaukee residents, and what we have heard for those who are supporting the Republican Party, they are angry, they are deeply saddened, and they believe that if President Trump actually had been killed, that it would have been the beginning of civil war. And they still think that's possibly on the horizon. So this has stirred up very deep feeling among many Americans. So Stephen, I'm sure as people can see behind us here, the gates and the officers, security here is very tight. Maybe you can talk a little bit about what you've seen.
Well, the entire downtown is like a perimeter. It's like a security perimeter. You can't go anywhere without these kind of passes to get through. There's security, FBI, who knows what kind of people.
Secret Service.
Basically, today we're in like a cop watcher's utopia, as I said before.
Yes.
So to all our cop watcher friends, you got to get down here with your cameras, but you can't get in.
But you won't be able to get in.
So it's really like downtown is like a no-go zone for anyone.
Yes.
So it's going to be very interesting to see how that plays out, because we're going to have to go through security every day to try to get to recording this.
Now, to try to end things, if at all possible, on a somewhat lighter note, Stephen, when you were out for a walk scouting locations, you saw an interesting truck. Do you want to describe what you saw there?
Yeah, I was just walking the perimeter to try to figure out how we got our entry points, and I see this truck just parked there and says, fight against the liberal media, or the leftist media. And I felt like it was just there for me somehow, because I was like the only one. I turned around, I look, and I'm like, there was no one else on the street. And the guy was just parked there. I tried to approach him, and he moved, and then he didn't seem like he wanted to talk to me, but I couldn't really see him because the windows were a little tinted. So, it was kind of a welcome, and I was like, thank you for inviting. I'm not saying I'm part of the leftist media, but,
I was gonna
whatever.
say-
Yeah.
I was going to say, we are independent media. We've seen a lot of our mainstream counterparts here, and we're going to keep an eye on them as well. We're going to bring you as much footage as possible. We feel that it's basically our obligation to document everything. We know we are documenting a moment in history right now, and we'll do our best to bring it to you unvarnished. My name is Taya Graham. This is Stephen Janis, and we're reporting for the Real News Network. Thank you.
Thank you so much for watching the Real News Network, where we lift up the voices, stories, and struggles that you care about most. And we need your help to keep doing this work. So please, tap your screen now, subscribe, and donate to the Real News Network. Solidarity forever.